Welcome to another episode of Real BMX Racing, the podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Wrenchman Racing, Wrenchman Wheel Builds, Recycles Bike Shop, Eddie Block Starting Blocks, 110% Nutrition, Extreme Squared, Artistic Apparel, with a special shout out to Toby Henderson at Box Components. Today we are talking to somebody that's been on the BMX scene for a long time. He has won multiple Grands titles, ABA, NBL. I'm talking on the 20-inch, the Cruiser, NAG 1, USA BMX, and we're talking of none other than the real JT, Jeremy Thompson. So yeah, let's start right here. How did you get involved with BMX?
So when I was 12 years old, I had a couple of friends in the neighborhood that were racing at the time. So they kind of taught me into coming to the local track, which was Greensboro at the time. They had a track at the YMCA. They had a little camp over there. So went over there on a Saturday morning, and that was the beginning.
And whose bike did you ride at that time? Did you race that day, or did you just go over there just to spectate?
So I did race that day. I had a Schwinn Sting at the time that we got from. We had a local Schwinn shop here in town, and that's where I got my first bike. Well, what I called a race bike then, and went over there and raced that first day.
Do you still have it?
I do not. I wish I did.
Right. It's always that one that gets away from us.
That's right.
And so you've been racing ever since?
Yeah. Now I took a break. I probably raced 10 years straight through. And then I would race, a couple of times a year for the next 2 years after that. So yeah, I probably went for a good 12 years to start off with.
Okay. That led you into your, early 20s, I guess? And
yeah, probably 22, 23 at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because I started when I was 12. So
yeah.
Were you also going to Grands and everything around that age growing up?
So I probably went to my first Grands when I was 15, I think. It was NBL Grands then. So yeah.
And where was that?
So that would have been 86, I think, probably.
I mean, so they weren't doing those in Tulsa at the time. They were doing those, in Kentucky, I think? Or?
Yeah, Louisville.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same track, the Derby City track?
Same track, sure is. Same track, same layout, cool. Basically. So yeah.
Oh, really? That's cool, man.
Yeah, it's neat to go back now and see, everything's all grown up around there, of course, and looks a lot different than it did back then.
Do you remember how you did?
Did not make the main.
Were you expert by then?
Yeah, because I think then when I started, I think you had to, or it was 5 wins and you were expert, so did pretty quick back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, was it back then? Because I remember something a little different, but back then, were you also getting 3 motos and then a main too?
So NBL, yes, and then ABA was the transfer system like it is now. So yeah, always 3 motos in NBL. Okay,
Shannon reached the race. Shannon, you were NBL too, right?
Yeah, I raced ABA, NBL. There was also a sanction called WWBA back in the day. I don't know if that was all Northeast, whatever, but in order to race some of the tracks in New York and Jersey, I needed the WWBA membership, which was the Worldwide BMX Association. I've asked a few guys around here about it. They're like, I've never heard of it, so I don't know. I'm just thinking that was just an up north thing or something, maybe.
Right. So being that you raced everywhere, what was your first indoor track, and what was that like?
So actually, we had an indoor track here in Burlington, not too far from where the outdoor track is. So we had a friend of mine that actually, one of the guys that got me into racing, his dad owned a cabinet shop. So we built all the wooden ramps in their shop, and we would take the ramps to the indoor place in their truck that they had. So, and concrete floor. So we raced there 3-4 times a weekend. Race Friday night, NBL, Saturday morning, NBL, Saturday afternoon, ABA, and then Sunday back to NBL. So race 4 times in one weekend over there.
So that same track, 2 different sanctions ran races at the same track. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, we did. There was a guy from the Jamestown area that he had an ABA track up there, and he was friends with the guy that had the NBO track here, and just worked out, and that's how they ran it.
Wow, 4 races in a weekend. That's
I
awesome.
know, right?
Did a lot of
Right.
racing.
Right.
So the jump all squared out, right? Pretty much.
Yep, squared out, peaky kind of things. They had some that would simulate kind of like rollers now, and then we had back then it seemed like a really giant tabletop jump. So that was the biggest jump on the track, and but yeah, they all squared off, peaky jumps. So yeah,
I mean, flat turns. Of course, you didn't have berms in there or anything, right?
flat turns.
Just
Yeah,
cones, leg out. Yep.
that's right.
Yeah.
We actually ran tires like we run today on the dirt, the smooth tires. We had tires back then that looked like what we run now. So yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
I was gonna say though, the one thing I did when I came back was I my first turn I put my leg out and everybody was like, "Oh!" And I was like, "Well, y'all don't do that anymore." They're like, "No, you're definitely gonna lose. You're gonna put way in the back."
Yeah, we'd sit down on our seat and go in the corners and throw that leg out every time.
Yep.
So yep.
I still ride with my seat a little bit higher because everyone's like, "Well, why do you do that?" I'm like, "Because if I fall, you just sit down. You're good. You're not gonna completely lose it." So it's just something that I've always done for a while, but it's one of those things.
Yep.
What was your first sponsor?
Okay, so there was a guy out of Sanford that had a team, and the name of it was the Z team, just the letter Z, and he would pick up a bunch of us local guys. So that was my first sponsor, I guess. And he hooked it up pretty good. He would pay for our nationals, and back then he said, if you ever get national number 1, which NAG won, I'll buy you a car. And
wow,
of course, no one ever won. Kind of sounded good at the time anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
That would have been pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Was there anybody on the team that that still rides now, besides yourself?
So one of the other guy that got me back into it, Patrick Cross, he was on the Z team at one point. We were on there together, and he raced for a while. So I started back in 2006 on a call from him and the other guy, Joe Clark. They were like, "Hey," Joe was already racing at the time, and then he had reached out to me a couple of months before Patrick did, and Patrick was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna get a bike," and so it kind of rolled from there. We kind of all met up and went riding one day, and just kind of rolled from there. But he only raced like a couple of years. His boys got into baseball really big, so he stepped out to help him get going in that.
Now, what about you? Did you play any other sports growing up, or was it just all BMX?
Basketball, baseball, and football, but mostly basketball. Yeah.
Super athlete.
So I think when I started racing, I dropped all the sports though, and just strictly BMX from then on. So
let's go back to your sponsors. What other teams have you rode for?
Okay, so when I started back in 2006, I went to NBO Grands that year, got third in the main, and the following week, I got a call from Carlos Perez, who was the Felt team manager at the time.
Okay.
Felt was my first factory ride. So we did that for, I think, until 2010. So Felt was going to step away. So we kind of hooked up a deal with GT at the time. So that lasted a year, and I also rode for Alto that same year. So I was doing NBL with the GT that year, and Alto with the ABA was still around at that point. So did, Alto for 2010 and GT, and then 2011, I rode just strictly for SC at the time.
Okay.
Did that for a year, and then the Felt team started back up, went back to Felt in 12, and then stayed there 12 and 13. And then that whole Felt team went to Black Crown 2014. And then, so we were all, had a really good Black Crown team 2014. And then that fell apart at the end of the year, and then went to ride for Chad Powers at Powers Bike Shop 15, 16, and 17. And then Answer 18 and 19. and then back to Chad 2020, and currently still with Chad. So
very cool.
Yep.
Are you still recovering from an injury, or are you back to racing?
Still recovering. Still can't get this thing to be like I want it to be, basically. So I'm still dealing with that. I go to practice and ride on Tuesday nights, and then, I'll try to ride some on Friday night during practice before the race, and then, sneak over there on the weekend sometimes and ride, but still dealing with it. Don't feel comfortable, or wouldn't feel comfortable racing now, because if I had like a unclipping incident, had to put my foot down, I think it would injure something else possibly. And the therapist that I'm kind of working with now kind of seems to agree. So could cause more damage in the end, so just kind of hold it out, which they told me originally that it'd be a year to a year and a half. So I'm in like 14 months now. So
okay.
Yeah, still dealing with it.
And your injury happened wasn't it at Grants? Or no, it was at
Burlington.
Yep, the Burlington race.
Yeah, the Burlington National. Did a Saturday morning, first round 20-inch.
I remember that because I remember hearing about it.
Yeah,
it was the one day I couldn't go, but I do remember hearing about it.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing all the kids running over to the medic tent, like, "Oh my God, Jeremy!" Like you have such a huge fan base at that track, man. And just to see the worry on the kid's face made me realize, like, hold on, this is a lot worse than I thought it was. Then I saw you actually getting, transported to your car and then driving out. I'm like, oh my God, bro, like our hero is just going to the hospital, But yeah, I'm glad it wasn't worse than that, man.
Right.
Yeah, I knew, I just unclipped going up the jump, I like pulled onto it and my foot came out. And then as I'm riding on the backside, I'm like, all right, I think I'm going to ride this out and, go to second round and move on with my day. And then at the last minute, my foot went under the pedal and it bent it backwards and broke it. So I knew as soon as I stood up, that I actually stood on it, and I could kind of hear it breaking even more. And and looked down and saw that humping, on my leg. So I was like, all right, I know this is broke. So
yeah, I think Shannon sprained his ankle at Grants last year, and he's been hurt for over almost a year now with a sprained ankle. Is what you got, right, Shannon?
It's broken, man, and some tendon damage. She says sprained ankle. Yo, man, stop playing with me.
I'm like, you ready to roll? No, not yet. Oh, okay, all right.
So I get it.
Not there on practice nights riding though.
It's one of those things we get older and it's just like we don't heal like we used to. When we were like 20 years old, it could be broken. You just feel like, what, if I can just tape it up, I'll be fine. Get me out there. Just get me out there. I'll be fine. Now you just look at it and you're like, oh no, I gotta go to work. I got life. Yeah, no, we're done. We're done for a little while.
That's right.
Your whole race career flashes right in front of you, man. It's like, oh, is this it? I know when I broke mine, I was like, this might be it for me, bro. This might be the end.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first thought.
I mean, at our age, have you had any other significant injuries throughout your career that you had to deal with?
I broke my wrist in 2008. So I got a plate and screws in my right wrist. And then 2009, I was over at Tanglewood and going through the rhythm and my stem broke. So going through the rhythm with my bars in my hand, not attached to the bike, and I broke one of my metacarpals on my left hand, which, no big deal, but I still had to have a little surgery to get that repaired. So yeah. And then I went for 15 years without anything else happening. So
that's why I told Everett, we see, it seems like the crashes come in bunches, especially with the old guys recently, a bunch of old guys locally been crashing. Yeah. I don't know, man. We just gotta kind of chill out a little bit, because it's not that serious anymore, especially at our level, at our age. We got to be careful, man, really. It's like, bro.
So what was, out of all the tracks that you've been to, what was your favorite track?
So I always liked Pittsburgh and Louisville, probably my two favorites. Probably old Louisville before they, redid it and put the bigger hills in. That was probably my favorite at the time. But yeah, so both of those probably my favorites. Really like South Park, it's a little jumpy, a little bigger. So it's always like to jump. So that's always been one of my favorites.
So did you ever, before the injury and everything, and I know that you never had to actually do it, but did you ever try to go on the 8-meter hills to see what it felt like?
I've been down Rock Hill several times.
Okay.
So yeah, I can see how those guys like it, but just this is not for the old guys, a little too much.
I'm going to ask you a question that a bunch of people have asked me in the past. Have you ever been pro?
Yes. Probably. I think it was. I think I turned in 1991. So I graduated high school in '89. I think I did 1 full year amateur there, and then I turned. It was actually called Super Class in NBL. So they had like A Pro, and they were kind of changing the classes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was actually called Super Class, but at the time it would have been like the equivalent of like A Pro before it went away in USA BMX. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that for?
Probably 2 years. I probably raced a full year the first year, and then, like I said, I kind of messed around a little bit the following year. But 1 year, it's pretty serious, going for it and all that year. Which, like I said, I think that would have been 91 probably.
Do you remember who your main competition was at the time?
Yeah, we had like Barry McManus, Craig Reynolds, Brian Foster. Guys like that. Alan Foster, Brian's brother. That's the ones that right off the top of my head I can remember.
No, these are the people that you would have competed with on a regular. You still talk to them?
I talked to Barry some on Instagram every once in a while. Kind of message with him. I run across Craig on Instagram a little bit.
That's cool.
But so yeah, just those two mainly.
Part of that BMX family that I like. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
So let's get to the track. I'm always interested in people's gait procedures. Like when you get up in the gate, do you take a couple of deep breaths before you get your bike on the gate, or like when the cadence starts going, do you take any breaths? Do you like visualize your race? Do you watch the light, listen for the beep? Those are the few questions I have.
Yeah. All right. So when I get up, I always click my left foot in first when I'm sitting behind the gate and take the deep breaths, like you're saying. And then I always kind of like say a little prayer to myself, like be safe, do your best, go fast or whatever. And then, kind of roll in the gate and then, just kind of get my pedals where I want them and then sit down and then just wait, for the cadence to go then. So yeah. Do all that before I get in. Once I'm up, I don't really do anything else, I'm just kind of, and I listen. I don't watch the lights anymore. I just kind of listen. So I pick a spot right in front of my tire and the gate, and just kind of look at the gate. And as soon as I hear that sound, and then that's when I go on that first beat.
Oh, so you said anymore as if you did watch lights at one point.
Yeah, I used to watch the lights. We're at South Park one year, and their gate's kind of flat and the hill's not that very big, and I was watching the lights and I would just feel like I was kind of like losing balance a little bit. Just didn't feel comfortable. And then, so in that practice, which would have been Saturday morning, most likely at the time, I went from watching the lights to listening, and I've listened ever since.
And so what about after the gate drops and the race starts? Can you still hear what's going on? Do you listen to the announcer, or can you hear the crowd? Do you hear other riders?
So, there's a few riders that will talk, going around the track, like in the corners or whatever. Sometimes I'll catch the announcer and, it kind of helps sometimes because you can, figure out who's behind you and sometimes even figure out if they're close, So especially with Greg Harrison announcing, he'll kind of right in your hip pocket, So,
yep.
Somebody else just said that. Was that who was that just said that, Everett, that Greg was like the best at that? I think it was like JC or one of the other riders said the same thing, and they mentioned Greg. They was like, Greg is just the best at that, to let you know when somebody's coming up, And sometimes people hear the crowd,
right? He gets
so the crowd starts to get louder. there's a race somewhere,
right.
Whether it's you and the other guy right behind you, or maybe behind you, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, he did that. We were in Rock Hill the other year and going down the third straightaway, and I hear Drew Motley's in your hip pocket, going to the last corner. So we get on, finish the race, and then the next day we're coming out, same scenario. I'm winning, Drew's in second, going to the last corner, and I hear him yell, "Guess who's in your hip pocket?" So kind of had a joke, the rest of the weekend about that, but kind of catch Greg here and there.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it helps though, definitely. If you can hear it, some people they say they don't hear anything. Once the gate drops, that's it. They go silent, in their ears, and sometimes they blinders on also. They don't really see too much.
Yeah. That's right.
So in the last couple of years when you were at your active, how much training would you say you go through on a weekly basis?
So most weeks I would train 5 days most of the time. Most of the times I would take Monday off because I knew I was going to the track on Tuesday. And then we would generally go to, track Tuesday, and then I would do something Wednesday, Thursday. And then if we raced on Friday, of course, if I raced on Friday, generally I would take Saturdays off, unless we were going to like another local track to ride or whatever. And then the guys would come over and we would sprint again on Sunday. So 4 or 5 days a week, just about every week.
Okay.
Except for race week. Race week I would only do like a half a sprint session on Monday. Every once in a while I go to the track on Tuesday and just put in, a few gates and first and second straights, and that'd be about it. But yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Do you work on your own bike?
No.
You don't.
No. Most people know that I'm not very mechanically inclined, and if someone heard you ask me that, they would probably laugh hysterically. So, I get like Scott Walker, he's a local here. He would always help me.
Okay.
Zach Gavin when I, get into a bind. But, when we get our bikes from Chad, they were always put together, so we didn't really have to do anything to them. So
Gotcha.
we were ready to roll as soon as we got them. So
but I mean, what size parts and all that you run. So I mean, how tall are you?
It's like 6'2".
6'2". And so what size frame do you run?
So my 20-inch, the top tube is a 22-inch.
Okay.
And my cruiser's a 21.75. They've been trying to find me a 22-inch cruiser for quite a while now, like 2 years. Hadn't come up with one of those yet, but when I find out.
What about crank length? What are you running for cranks?
180s on cranks for sure.
Okay, and what size bars and stem?
I usually run a 53 stem on both bikes. I did go to a longer one on my cruiser because of the 21.75 versus 22 on my 20-inch. My bars are the tangent flat irons. They're probably 8 or 8.5. I'm not sure exactly what they are.
Okay.
So what frame are you riding right now, or frames?
GT.
Okay.
Yeah, so Chad had worked out a deal with GT several years ago, and they like redid the contract last year. So I think they're locked in with GT for probably 2 more years after this year, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So do you get like a new frame every season, or you're good? Like, how do they put that together for you?
We have most of the time we have been getting new frames because they would change the colors on them. So we went from like a silver one, and then we went to a yellow one, and then
nice.
The one I'm on now, the 20-inch is silver because it's an older one because of the longer top tube for me.
Nice.
So, do frames have lifespans?
I guess it depends on who you talk to. A lot of people say they wouldn't ride, aluminum frame for so many years and a carbon frame so long. I've been fortunate to get a new frame just almost every year, that I've been racing, with the teams I've been on. But I'll run a pair of bars forever if I can get away with it, just because I like the way they feel. So
right.
Yeah.
And so when you train now, when you go to the track, are you clipping in or are you just riding flats?
So I started clipping in again, I think July, but I did flats, up until then. I think I would, as soon as the track opened, I went back out and did, some practice laps and figured it was a good idea to have the flats on in case I needed to, get off the bike or something. So, but yeah, I've been back on the clips since July now. So yeah.
Okay.
So about a year after your accident, it took about
pretty
a
much.
year to get back into the clips. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And do you feel like strong enough that you can unclip and clip in? I mean, not now to race, but just to even just clip in.
So clipping out is the issue I have. Just twisting my foot to get it out. It doesn't always feel good.
Right.
So yeah, it's some days it's better than others, but trying to clip out of that left foot that was injured is a little harder at times.
When you look at the bikes that we grew up riding with, from the 80s, 90s to the bikes that are out now, which one did you prefer more? Did you prefer the style of what we grew up with in the 80s and 90s, or this new style that I was told is what stretched out to why we can't really pop like we used to?
Yeah. Being taller, definitely the bikes that we ride now, I think are better. I think, back in the day, I think that's just what we got used to and we didn't know any, better. So, yeah.
So, I mean, when did you reach your peak height? I'm sure you were probably young and you were still on one of those little ass 20-inch bikes.
Probably, I think I grew a little bit after high school. So I was probably 6'6" in high school. So I probably grew another inch or two after high school. So probably like 90, 91 is when I probably got my tallest, and like that. So yeah.
Around the time you turned pro, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Wow.
So how was it traveling back then, since the golf bag, because you're definitely before the golf bag era. So how would you take your bike with you on flights, or did you guys just always take like a team bus or like a family wagon or something?
Yeah, so back then we drove everywhere. Whatever car we had at the time is what we took. My dad had a truck and had like the camper shell thing on the back, and he had put a little bed in there. So we would leave out for the races and we could get in the back of that and lay down and rest or whatever. And then when I got older, just jump in the car with 2 or 3 friends and go, and no cell phones or no GPS. We had the map, and my dad would be like, write the directions down and like pay attention. So that's how we all did it. We got there, we call and let them know we were there. So different times than what we live in now.
Right.
That's cool that early on that he supported you like that, man.
Man, they took me everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And I've been the kid that didn't make mains, at nationals. So they would take me all over, man, and I might make the main one weekend and the next weekend make no mains, but full support from my parents, man, the whole time.
That's pretty cool.
Still have it to this day.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. So is going back to Grands and a thing on your table that you might want to consider for 2024?
I hope so. I always said that I'll stop racing when I can't ride like I want to. Right. So if I can get my strength back and things like that, then definitely consider it. So I had a couple of more goals that I wanted to accomplish before I quit anyway. Right. So, still had a couple of things I wanted to do. But if I can't get myself back to 100% and ride like how I used to ride, then probably not. I'll just kind of take Raiden and let him do his thing and just, ride at the track and stuff locally. Okay. So, yeah.
I mean, so what else are you trying to accomplish that you haven't yet? And can you name some of the accomplishments of the past? I mean, you won Grands before, correct?
Yeah, I think I've won Grands 5 times, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I won it twice in NBA. I think I got a 120-inch in NBL and Cruiser, and then I think I won 5 in ABA, USA BMX.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but yeah, just a couple more goals that I wanted to accomplish, and I'm not sure that I will now, but we'll see.
Also, we were talking about competition with Renato Silva last month, and he mentioned your name as somebody that's up there in the competition with him. So I know he would love for you to get back out there and bring the heat to him.
We message from time to time, and he'll always end the message with, "I can't wait to get back on the gate with you one day." So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, we've been going at it for 4 or 5 years now. Just like every weekend. We're at the same races. So yeah.
That's pretty
So
cool.
I know he's one guy that you see in the gate. You're like, man, I can't mess up today, bro. Like you got to have a super hot lap and just flawless. And like, who else do you look up and see that you like, that you need to bring your A game? I'm sure there's a few others.
Yeah. So prior to COVID, it was always like Sean Dupree and Raul Gomez. Chris Kennedy was there at the time. Jim Bramer on Cruiser, Mitch Bingham, Drew Motley. It's a bunch of guys. And then I think Raul retired in 17, and then Sean went out in the COVID year. So that brought on like a new group of guys. Basically, they were always there, but just kind of opened up the spots when these guys left. And then Renato being on the East Coast now, he was always around. Like I said, Jim and Chris and Drew and Mitch and all those guys. But Matt Dallas. But I feel like in 20-inch, man, just going at it with Renato like every weekend. Billy Griggs come over from time to time. So yeah, tough competition always.
And when you started racing, did you race Cruiser, or did that come later on?
So when I started back, I only did 20-inch up until 2009. So the first 3 years, I just did 20-inch. And I was like, I'm going to get a Cruiser. Because you have to race all day. And, some of the guys were doing boat bikes. Some were just one. And, just long days at the track. So I was like, I'm going to get a Cruiser. And so I think I've been on Cruiser since 2009. But so, yeah.
Would you say it's an easy adjustment to go back and forth between both bikes on the same race day? Like that seems pretty intense to go from two different styles of, I guess, how they ride. Or do you just try to make your bikes as similar as possible to where you can't really tell the difference?
Well, you try to get them set up as similar as you can, but that Cruiser, it's always going to feel different than that 20-inch. That 20-inch, is just smaller. It's a little more twitchy when you ride it.
Right.
I feel like I can jump on the Cruiser and just go, from the start. Just go out first lap and jump stuff. The bigger wheels makes it a little bit easier. So what I try to do is like as soon as I get done on one bike, come back from a race, I'll grab the other bike and go cool down.
Right.
And then I'll be up for the next race on that next bike. So but yeah, it's that 20-inch and Cruiser is a little bit different, different style of riding on it.
What's your favorite style of gate? They have the barrel gates. They have the gates that they have at Grands. I guess they call them the paddle gates, which they have at Rally now. Rock Hill to me is a slower gate. I know it's a barrel, but it's slower than the one at Burlington, just say.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference, like barrel gate, paddle gate?
So I've only been on the paddle gate one time, and that was in Raleigh. We went the other week when they first got it going. I liked it. I would like to, Raleigh's kind of flat, their hill is. So I'd be curious of how it felt on a steeper hill. But I liked it. Like, I don't think you have any chance of hitting it. Like, it's really fast. I guess the barrel gate's probably my favorite right now. Like I said, until I get on a paddle gate with a little more incline,
That's right, because a lot of people didn't get on the paddle gate until Grands this past year, and you weren't there. So yeah, all right.
Yeah. And I was curious to how that rode. I was kind of messaging the guys, how's the gate or whatever, and they're like, everybody seems to like it, too. So
yeah. I mean, I was so excited when I heard they were getting it at Rally, man, because that gate that they had before was just outdated. And for them to have that new style gate is just so cool, man. Because, if you're going to Grands, you definitely want to head over to Rally and get some laps in, on that gate. I would suggest that.
Yeah, perfect.
It is fast, man. You could get out. I mean, you're not flipping over the gate. I actually seen a couple of the older guys trying to put their tires around the gate before it drops, so half of their bike is like actually in the first straight before the gate drops,
Yeah.
That's dangerous, but I've seen it.
Yeah, Raiden tried it one time. I was like, hearing that Grands like Joris and them were lining the bikes up so they could get the front wheel to go around it. And I was like, I just don't see how it's possible, but he lined up off the grate in Raleigh that day, and he was trying to see if he could go around it. So.
Yeah, they were just trying to put their tire as close as to the right or left as possible, and just
that's what he was
swinging
doing.
it around. And yeah. I think all tracks should have that. I think it should be like a universal gate system, like all the tracks mandatory paddle gates. That's it, man. Don't run your track until you get one. I mean, I love that gate. I love that gate.
Yeah.
So with all the tracks that you've ridden in the last 5 years, what would you say was the most technical?
Most technical. I hate to say Nashville, because Nashville, I feel like it's just like my nemesis. Like, I can't ever figure Nashville out for some reason. Go there one weekend, 1 year, and do really good, and the next year not so good. But I don't think it's that technical. So probably like an older Louisville, a few years back, maybe. I don't feel like our tracks over here are that technical anyway, really. Some of the rhythms are different, which some people think are more technical, if they're deeper or whatever. But I don't think anything that we ride on is that technical anyway. Like, go back to Pittsburgh, the jumps are bigger, of course, but I'm not sure I call that technical either, really. It's just different from what we ride, most of the time, of the other tracks. Most of the tracks, the jumps aren't that big. They're all about the same. I always tell people, like, all these tracks are the same that we ride on, just the jumps are in different places, basically. So
never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, somebody told me that, and I kind of figured. I mean, so you have the same obstacles, like you said, at every track, just positioned in a different spot. So once you know how to attack those obstacles, you should be okay wherever you go,
And I always tell the guys, I'm like, you really need to be able to figure the track out in a couple of laps. Like, if you can't figure it out in 2 or 3 laps, then you might have a problem come race time. So every year when I go to Grands, I'm like, all right, first lap, I'm going to try to jump the jump on the track that is going to be the one that you have to jump for the weekend. So I just try to go out there and just get it over with and jump something first lap if I can, and just be done with it. The quicker you get it done, the better off it can be for the rest of the practice, and for a race weekend too. So
you hear that?
Not everybody in your class jumps like you do. Like, were you always a jumper? Like,
I'm about to say, you ready for it, Shannon?
I've always been known. Back in the day, I was like known as a jumper. I just jump, and I would just go ride my bike. Never really trained, but I would just go ride all the time and find somewhere to jump.
Right.
So yeah. So.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's just amazing me that you just don't even think about it still, like, to this day, to just go there and do it. Like, I used to jump as a kid, but as an adult, like, I'm like, oh my God, when I'm racing, I'm like, oh, I'm going to pull up right here. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I go look at the video and I'm like, oh my God, I was going so slow. I would have died if I tried to pull up on that thing. Like, it's just, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. I know I think Grands, I think it was 2017, maybe 16, 17, come out, and first lap on Cruiser, there was a set of doubles on the second straight, maybe the first jump out of the first corner. And I jumped that first lap, come back around. Some of the guys are like, man, you jumped that first lap. I'm like, telling you, man, I'm getting it out of the way as quick as I can. Like, move on to something else, the rest of the track. So.
Do you feel clips help you jump better than being on flats?
I don't think so. I think the clips are good right out of the gate, but I guess from, being a jumper back in the day, that I don't rely on the clips to help me jump today, but I can tell a difference, like the first probably 5 pedals out of the gate, like there's a definite advantage there.
So do you feel like somebody can be competitive in your group on flats?
Well, you got Brent Lee. He races flats. He's always in the main, in those Grands mains. Dale Holmes, when he races, he's on flats. First time I raced Dale, he was on flats in Louisville. I think I beat him the first day. He won the second day, and I don't think he raced Sunday. But guys like that are different anyway. It's just a different breed. So.
I mean, as soon as you mentioned Brent Lee, I was like, that dude been racing for like 100 years, man. So him on flats is just like anybody else on clips,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I was told that, you know, it's just the first couple of pedals that they have that advantage. After that, you should be able to keep up with them. But that's all you're doing is keeping up with them after those first 5 pedals, because you guys are out of there on clips, you know. It's just I just, you know, I'm just trying to think. I'll be expert soon. Do I need to get back on clips in order to be competitive? Can I stay on flats and just work a little harder and possibly be competitive? And it's just like, I know the answer.
Yeah. It's hard, man. It's hard to jump in there in that class on flat pedals and be competitive. Like I said, man, you got Brent and Dale Holmes that do it, but you know, Dale's definitely a different breed, you know, and Brent's just smart rider, you know. He might not be in contention on the first straight, but I can guarantee you when you get on that last straight, he will be right there on you. You know, racing himself a bunch of times when he's done.
I mean, I guess it seems like I said, I dust off my my clips and get back out there.
Yeah.
Every time I'm like, I tell Sean, I'm like, I'm gonna ride this national with my clips. He's like, have you been practicing with them? No. He's like, you're gonna go out there and just put them on. Sure, yeah, let's do it.
So I have a clip flat story with Brent Lee. We were Cruiser Grands Main, probably 2000, it might have been 2017, 16, 17, somewhere in there. He's in lane 1, I'm in lane 2. So my plan is like, man, this dude's on flats. I'm gonna snap the gate and get in his lane as quick as I can. Then, you know, everybody else is on my outside, try to, you know, take control of this race from the start. So years later, you know, me and Brent are talking. He's like, well, you know what? My plan was I was going to snap you out of the gate and cut you off immediately. And I was like, that was the same plan I had, man. We've got a same plan going into that race.
Nice.
So you UCI, there's no 30 foot on UCI, right? UCI rules?
Right.
And so, I mean, if you raced that before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Worlds or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, how different is that? Like, how difficult is it to like abide by the rules? Like, I mean, because you got to know the rules, you know.
So, honestly, man, I don't know of anybody in the class that really worries about a 30-foot rule. I've never once got in the gate and been like, I can't cut over until I get to this 30-foot line. So my plan is as soon as I snap you, like whoever's to my left or my right, like if I got the fast guy on my right, I'm gonna try to get in your lane as quick as I can, you know. And I think that's what everyone does. I don't know of anyone that we race that really worries about the 30-foot rule. You know, I'm always like, you know, I'm gonna make you call it, you know. So I don't ever think about the 30-foot rule when I'm racing.
And so what about, I heard if you hit the line, like in UCI rules, if you just touch the line with your tire, that's it, right? You're out of the race, disqualified?
Well, yeah, see, I don't know. Maybe, you know, overseas they do that. But like, you know, when we had Worlds here in Rock Hill, you know, there weren't lines painted down the hill to go. I guess are they in Rock Hill? I'm not even sure.
I think they have now, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I imagine they could call it, but again, that's not what I'm thinking about when I'm up there. I'm just going to go, you know, and they get me for it. But I'm trying to, you know, cut the fast guy off as quick as I can, you know, honestly. So,
I mean, because I just recently heard that, and I'm just thinking to myself, that's like the last thing I want to worry about is hitting the line, because I want to try to ride the inside sometimes. Yeah. Then you got to worry about the line, you know. It's like, geez, man, you know, because I'm all over the place anyway, so I'll probably hit the line, you know. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I was going to ask you is, when it comes time to going into a national, do you change your diet up a little bit, or is it just the same 365?
So I generally eat pretty well anyway. But like leading up to the national, like I won't have like any sweets or anything, you know, most of the time. Okay. But I'm more of like a grilled chicken, green beans, mashed potato, corn kind of guy anyway. So I eat pretty well anyway. You know, going back to the sweets. So these guys I travel with, you know, they show up with donuts and things like that sometimes. So, you know, we sneak one in here or there, you know, on the trip or whatever, but I don't get carried away with it by any means. So
when you pull up to a big race, like a Grands or a national, Are you like the super serious guy, you know, like head down, you know, bike in hand, just walking to wherever you're going to, like, don't talk to me, I'm focused? Or are you like a little bit loose? And I've just noticed that the riders that just seem like they're a little looser at the nationals, they seem to do better, you know, because they just don't seem to be too focused on the race, you know. And I've noticed that recently.
Yeah, I try not to let it get to me. You know, the more you think about the race, I think that's when you start getting tensed up and maybe kind of get off your game a little bit. So I try to stay relaxed. Now, when we're on the back of the hill, like, I don't really want to talk to you at that point, you know, like when we're 2 motos from like maybe getting in the gate or whatever, like that's when I like stop, you know, and that's when I kind of like start the mental stuff, like basically talking to myself, you know, half the time. But yeah, once we get about 2 motos behind the gate, you know, I don't really want to talk about it anymore, you know. So.
Have you ever had a track that just freaked you out, where you're just like, you had to do mentally, you had to overcome the track before you even got to it?
Nashville. Honestly, man, I think the first year I went to Nashville, come down, you know, and it's just a tabletop, that first jump, you know, and you got that really long straightaway from the gate, you know, a really long sprint, you know, you got the drop off there before the tabletop. And I went there, it was 2011, I think, my first time. And, you know, ran my cruiser moto, you know, whatever. I don't know what I got, you know, probably transferred out. So 20 moto, man, I'm coming down that hill. I had an inside gate and I hit that tabletop, man, and it threw me sideways. And I was like, this is it. When you land, you're going to crash, and it's going to be a really hard one because you're going so fast. But somehow pulled it out, you know, and didn't crash. But after that, man, all weekend, when I got in the gate, I think my heart was beating like 100 miles an hour. And I was like, I can't do this anymore this weekend. So I pulled out that Saturday night. I was like, I am not racing tomorrow. I cannot do it another day.
Right.
But that's been the one track that gets to me. And I think it's dumb because the first jump is a tabletop, but back then it was really lippy and you were going so fast and it would shoot you straight up in the air. And it just got to me. I ain't gonna lie to you, it really got to me that weekend. Because I messaged Sean DePreet that night and I was like, look, man, I'm not racing tomorrow. I'm pulling out, you know. And he was like, wow. I was like, I can't do it again tomorrow, you know. And you feel like a punk, but I was just like, I can't do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
I've made it a point to go back the next year and like try to like conquer the track, I guess you would say.
Right.
But yeah, Nashville's been the one track that will get to me.
I've heard of tons of people talking about that first jump.
You
It's know,
crazy.
like yeah, especially smaller guys. Like it's like just riding into a wall. They say you can't see beyond it. You know, it's just they said it's really scary and you're going really fast.
Yeah, I think, you know, I would have a speedometer on my bike for sprinting purposes, but just to, you know, see what I was sprinting. And, you know, go to Nashville and you look down at your speedometer and you're going 30. And you know it's through the first jump, you know. You're going 30 miles an hour through the first jump. Back then it was like I said, it was really lippy and tall and shoot you straight up in the air. And like to me, it's hard to judge the landing because a tabletop is just flat across and you're just like jumping to nowhere. Whereas if it's a step jump, you kind of see that second part and you go up and over it or whatever. So, but yeah, man, it got me that weekend, not gonna lie.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel about Rock Hill the first few times that I went there, like just standing in the gate. I always kept looking, like I'd watch the little kids in the novice, and I'm like, all right, if the 6-year-old can drop in, I can drop in. But if there's video of me out there for the first year, literally that gate would drop and I wouldn't pedal. I would just literally I would just let it take me down. I'm like, all right.
You're smart.
So do you change your gear? Like can you go to a track, look at the track and say, hold on, man, that's a 43-16 gear, or that's a 45-16 gear, or do you just keep the same gear across all tracks?
So mainly I run the same gear at every track. So 44-16 on my 20-inch and 41-18 on my cruiser. I did get to the point going to Grands, I would change it to a 43-7, I think. The decimal, the Ren and decimal gears. Yeah. 43-7 or 43-8 most of the time there, because, you know, the smaller starting hill. a lot of times the first straight was smaller. And then my cruiser, like at Rock Hill, I will put on like a 41.2 there on my cruiser. But for the most part, I'll leave my gear alone overall.
And do you run the same size tires on the front and back? Or do you run the smaller tire in the back?
So I usually run a 1.75 on the back.
Okay.
I did have a 195 on the front of my 20. It was like one of the last Maxxis tires I had. But cruiser's the same on both. And most of the time, my 20-inch is the same. I just like those Maxxis tires, and that was the last one I had. So I just kind of stuck it on.
Have you ever gotten to like just try out a carbon frame?
So the first time I was on Powers, they had a deal with Haro, and we rode carbon frames there, 20-inch.
Did you like it?
I do like it. I always tell people there's something about it, and I never could figure out what it was that I didn't like. I think it was going through rhythm sections. I don't know what it is. It's just something about it that it didn't feel the same as an aluminum bike to me for some reason.
Okay.
But that first 5 out of the gate, now you can really tell a difference on that carbon.
Oh, really?
It's nice.
Somebody told us that they like going around the berms and their teeth chatter. That's how like stiff they want their bike. It's like, I want my tires pumped all the way up. I want carbon, everything. I want my teeth chattering while I'm going around the turn, I just thought it was funny. And I'm like, that's not what I want,
It's a different feel. And the sounds, like going over jumps and landing and, like I said, rhythms again, it's just a different sound too, going through there versus the carbon versus the aluminum.
And do you prefer a silent hub or like a profile style hub that makes, noise?
I kind of like the noise, because we've been on profiles with Chad for seems like ever. So I think I had Chris King when I was on auto.
Okay.
So he built me a cruiser, and I think that had Chris King's on, and they're fairly quiet, I think. But I like the noise.
Were you on auto the same time Renato was on auto?
No, I don't think Renato was in the States when I was on auto. I was on auto in 2010.
Oh, that's right. I don't think he got back to 2015, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you guys were on the same team at one point or.
Yeah, no.
And how was it racing the who's that? Domingos Lamaglia? He's another fan.
Yeah, I left him out. So I raced DL back in the NBO days a couple of times, we would do like a 30 and over open. And then now, DL's tough, man. He knows his stuff, he's smart, with his training and all and coaching. So yeah, when DL's in there too, man, that's another one. You better be ready. He lit us up in Nashville last year, Friday night.
Because I met him and I'm like, he's like my height, but his legs are twice as big as mine. And I can just tell, he's an older dude that's just in shape, man.
He really
gets on his bike and does his thing. And I'm like, wow, bro. You guys, all of you guys amaze me, man, how smooth you are at, the age you are. And it just blows my mind, man,
I agree. I agree for that too, because I watch people like you guys riding and you're doing your thing. And I look at Shannon when he rides and it's nothing like that.
What you doing here, Shannon?
Shannon, what age group are you in again? I forgot. What was that group?
51, 55, intermediate.
That's right. How many more wins do you need?
One more, man. Stop playing with me.
He's gonna be up
knocking on your door. He's knocking on your door.
That's why I asked you about the flats. Do you think anybody could be competitive in the group on flats? Because that's my plan. I don't think I can clip in anytime soon. And I'm like, do I even have a chance, man, on flats? I'm just gonna have fun with it for a little while. Maybe move back in the clips eventually. It's whatever, man.
Yeah.
So you have a son that races.
Yes, Raiden.
And how old is he?
He just turned 14 in July.
And when did you start him?
So Raiden wouldn't race for the longest time. So he started riding when he was 3. And he would actually come to the track with me and he would practice. He probably rode at the track with me for 2 years when he first started riding. So he's probably 3, 4, 5 years over there riding me. Had a little 12-inch Trek.
Okay.
And then he wouldn't come after that, for like 2, 3 years. He wouldn't come back over there and ride at all. Then I finally, like, we would go to Rock Hill to ride, and he would stay on that pump track the whole time. Would not ride the track whatsoever. And then one Saturday, I finally talked him into it. Say, come over here and ride the track with us. So then he started riding the track more, but he still wouldn't race. So he's only been racing. I think he started when he was 10 or 11, maybe. So he really hasn't been racing that long.
Okay.
He just wouldn't do it. They would ask him every practice night, when are you going to race? When are you going to race? And then someone asked him at a practice one night, and he was like, Friday. So I was like, oh, okay. So we'll see if he sticks to this. And he did, and he's been hooked ever since.
Nice.
So he's kind of like you then, man. He's like, I'm not racing until I am ready, man. And he just knew that day he was ready, and that was it.
And I think so. That's what my wife always said, is like, our kids won't do anything until they think they're ready and they're good at it. And I'm assuming that's what he did. So, he felt like he was ready. So he's been hooked ever since. I can't get him off of his bike now.
He's in the expert class too, right?
He turned expert, I think, 2 years ago in Atlanta.
Okay.
He won. So he told me that weekend, he said, I want to win both days, and that will make me expert. So he wanted to get 5 national wins to turn expert. So, and that's what he did. So,
okay.
So, yeah.
So what's his plans moving forward? Is he trying to become a pro? Is that on the radar for him?
I think he would tell you he wants to be a pro and wants to go to the Olympics, like everyone else. Here he comes now. So,
all right.
So yeah, come tell these guys what your plans are to race. They want to know if you're going to turn pro or what you want to do. This is Raiden. Shannon.
What's up, Raiden?
Hey.
Slide.
Can't.
You got to slide in a little bit, man. Don't let your father block you out.
There you go.
I definitely want to go pro when I get older. I don't know when, but probably like right out of high school, somewhere in there. Kind of try it out, see how it feels. So,
have you talked to any other pros to see, what the real deal is as far as being a pro and the work that they have to put in? And
not really, no.
You hang with a pro one day just to see what the day in the life of a pro is, to see if that's something you really want to do. And I'm sure you do, because I've seen you ride before, and you're awesome, bro. Like, you're amazing to watch ride. And I have no doubt you would become pro if you wanted to. I just know it's really hard, man. And it just takes a lot of work, because those guys are freaking fast, man. He
was always a big Justin Posey fan when Justin was around, here still.
I just saw a picture with you, Cam, and Justin Posey. Maybe Tanglewood.
Yep.
Yeah, it was like a young Cam, and it looks so funny, man.
Yeah, sitting at that picnic.
Yes, exactly. It was like I don't know, like chilling with some fast guys or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's Cam. Get out of here.
Yep. How was the adjustment going from 13 to 14 since you just aged up a couple of months ago? Have you noticed a big change in it, or is it about the same?
I haven't actually raced a national since I turned 14, so it hasn't been that much different besides not being able to race like the local guys. Okay. But
so like, what are you working on? Like, what are your weaknesses that you're working on now?
Definitely like gate to 30 foot.
Mm-hmm.
That for sure.
And you're clipped in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you always, because when they stopped riding clips, when they stopped letting kids ride clips, you were racing at that time, correct?
Yeah.
Or no? And so you went from riding clips to then having to ride flats again?
He never rode clips. He would flat pedals until he turned 13. So even when he could, I think they changed the rules somewhere in there, but he's been on flat pedals the whole time, until he turned to where he could run them. So yeah, so he learned to ride without the clips, which I think was good.
Have you noticed a big difference since switching to clips?
It's definitely a lot different out of the gate, but on the track, it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
And what's your favorite track? You rode a few tracks.
I really like
Jumps
Pittsburgh.
What's that?
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I really like that track.
And why is that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you want to tell them why?
It's a lot of like jump and like it's a lot of jumps and stuff, and it's really fun to jump and like manual around the track. So that's the main reason.
Wow. So you're out there jumping like that already. Okay.
He took the pro set too, so that saved him several times up there that weekend.
Nice.
I was waiting on
Okay.
the.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw this guy in the pro set though. I was
Right.
like, oh, that's just Raiden jumping. So when did you start jumping?
I don't really know. It's
You were
been a
little.
while, yeah. I wasn't racing then. I know that, but
I mean, is there any jump you wouldn't jump? I mean, have you went down the 8-meter hill at Rock Hill
mm,
and you cleared it?
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's another thing. Every time we go to Rock Hill, I can't get him off the big hill. Like, we got to race the small hill during the national, but he's on the big hill the whole time. So
Nice. So did you guys say that you are going to go to Rock Hill in next month, I guess?
yeah, we'll be there.
Nice.
But you're not racing.
Not looking like I will. Just like I said,
Not
not
there
until
yet.
I'm ready. But he can for sure. He will.
Nice. Nice.
So I remember at one point you definitely thought about it. I mean, you mentioned it that you might do Rock Hill to somebody. I forgot. Somebody asked you, Jeremy, you going to race Rock Hill? And you were like, yeah, I might, I don't know yet. So, but yeah, I didn't think so, man. Because Emily kept telling me, man, that you would not race until you knew you were like competitive.
Yeah.
And I figured that most guys at your level just won't, because it just won't. I get it.
Yeah.
So no Rock Hill this year, huh?
Not looking like it.
So what about Worlds next year for both of you guys? You guys both plan on racing those?
I know he wants to. And again, with me, if I could get myself back, positive. That was a goal. That was one of my goals. I had 2 goals, and that was one of them. So, maybe. So I missed that main lap down there the other year in Cruiser. I got 5th in the semi. Got passed at the line by Raul Gomez. So that's kind of been, one of my goals to get in that World's main. So
There you go.
I mean, coming back, man, how much harder do you have to train than you normally would have trained, like for a race? Or, I mean, do you have to go twice as hard because you were injured and you feel like you're kind of falling back, as far as, I mean, do you peak out at a point? Do like the other guys you race, are they like peaked out? Are they going to get any faster? I mean, some of these guys are 52, 53 years old. Are they just going to continue getting faster, or are they peaked out and now you just maybe have to catch up to them?
I don't know about that. I've kind of had this conversation with Dave Archibald. He's West Coast, Washington State guy. And we talk about, lifting weights heavy, do the old guys benefit from it? I don't know, but it seems like, maybe we just get to that point and we are just trying to maintain the speed that we are right now. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been my thought, every weekend there seems like, like this might be Renato's weekend. This might be my weekend, in Cruiser, it might be Kennedy's weekend or Jim Bramer, Drew, Mitch, whoever, Domingos, Billy Griggs, again, same guys. You just don't know which weekend is going to be your weekend. You try for every weekend to be your weekend, but
Of course.
it's not realistic, to go and think you're going to win every single race.
So Raiden, do you have? I was going to ask Raiden, do you have a favorite rider that you like to watch?
I really like Joris. Dode.
It's not a bad pick. That dude is super fast, man.
Now who are your current sponsors right now?
Nomads and J&R
Nice.
and Martino's Pizza, I think.
Okay. And what are you riding right now? What's your setup?
Hyper with answer bars, answer forks, and what are the wheels called?
I think you have the Alienation.
Oh yeah,
profile
Alienation wheels.
He gets my hand-me-downs.
Not bad.
I'm like, right, that's not a bad deal right there. Cool.
So, Raiden, so when you're on the gate, do you watch the light or do you listen for the beat?
I watched the light.
Do you? And it's always been like that?
I watched the gate until I started racing, I think. And then I started watching the light.
And what about gears for you? Do you like changing gears for different tracks, or do you just run the same gear for all tracks?
If it's like an indoor track with a really small hill, I might go down a little bit, but for most of the tracks, I stay the same.
I mean, do you know when you need to change gears, or does somebody have to tell you, hey, it looks like you need to change your gear, man, like your dad or somebody watching you, like one of the coaches? Or
I can kind of tell based on what the hill is like. Like if it's a small hill, I'll go down, and if it's a bigger hill, I'll probably stay the same.
Mhm.
Now, do you do any of the repairs on your bike, or you change anything on your bike as well, or do you guys?
Better than them.
I actually get him to do, a little bit to my bike every once in a while. He's kind of got it figured out, so that's good.
Nice.
And Raiden, do you have a coach?
Mm-mm. Well,
Yeah, you
him.
do. Yeah, that's
Yeah, you do. You're like, oh, this
you
guy.
got a live-in coach, man. Are you kidding me?
Right. So, well, I mean, that's pretty much. Do you have any more questions, Shannon? I figured.
No, but I definitely want to get you back on when you start racing again. If that's possible, we would definitely love to do a follow-up on this.
Definitely.
Just to see how you feel getting back into the mix, back at the track, just to, after you podium, first, second, or third.
And
See,
maybe we can
to get back there.
Maybe we get Shannon to wear one of his GoPros so that way he'll be, behind you and he can get the good shots.
Man,
I'll have to zoom it, bro. Are you kidding me? I have to start at the second turn, bro, and just
right. Just like, let me look down ahead. He's way over there. As you can see, our relationship is awesome. We are the best.
That's good.
Here.
Yeah, so I guess that's it for now, man. I really thank you guys for coming by. Raiden, thank you, man. Matter of fact, we might want to do one with you soon, because we're going to do like a kids edition, and we definitely want to get you back on.
Oh, there we go.
So, all right, you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Man.